As we move on to our next panel discussion, which is on HR metrics that matter, using tech to measure and optimize workforce productivity, it's my privilege to invite our panelists. Let's put our hands together for Head, Center of Excellence, HR, Big Basket, Ashwin Ramaswamy. He's the Head HR, Apollo Pharmacies Limited. Please make some noise for Hanish Nambiar. She is Deputy Head HR, Trent Limited. Let's put our hands together for Khushbu Mundra. A warm welcome to the Head HR Retail Lifestyle International Private Limited, Ravi Shankar Singh. A warm welcome to the GM HR Reliance Brands Limited, Shobha Cecil. He is the Head Total Rewards and Analytics, Reliance Retail Limited. A warm welcome to Vikas Jain. A warm welcome to the AVP and Head HR, Mr. DIY India, Yogesh Somani. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome on the stage our most erudite moderator, Head L&D Retail, Titan Company Limited, Sabharatnam Narayanan. Over to you, sir.
So that was the fourth or fifth time she got my name wrong. Hence, I had to spell it out. Sorry. So sorry for this last session. I think, after all the gifts and awards, people have just disappeared. But for the audience who have stayed back, thank you very much. We will ensure that this session is very useful and fruitful to all of you. I have eminent panelists alongside, and we have done a rehearsal and we have understood that they are having depth of knowledge which they are going to share with all of you. We will also engage on the most important topic, which is HR tech. And more than technology, it is data. And how do you measure? How do you go about analyzing that? There is a lot of data that's available to us, both in qualitative and quantitative form. How do you analyze that? What should organizations do when they start, when they grow, when they mature? So we will explore all these questions in the panel discussion. So my first question to all the panelists, and anybody can choose to answer first, is, when we are talking about HR metrics, what are the metrics that are important for you? And how do you go about measuring that? So Yogesh, probably we can start with.
Sure. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me here. So I will not directly give out a lot of metrics because we have a huge panel, and I'm sure they will also talk a lot about different metrics that we can look at. I'll just give my worldview, which is a little different when it comes to HR metrics. I think if we have to make any meaningful contribution to business, HR metrics should come out from business metrics, right? As an example, of course, we can continue to romance all our existing matrices that we use in HR, but if you look at a business matrix like a customer satisfaction score. Now, if that score is low, all of us understand that, okay, the customers are not satisfied, they are not happy. You may want to create an hypothesis and see, okay, are your employees happy, right? So parallelly, you may want to run an eNPS and see what's your ESAT score, So once you get that, probably there is a correlation that your people are not happy, and conversely that's leading to that your customers are not happy. Similarly, if you see your inventory hygiene is not in top shape, right? The stocks are not getting filled on time on floor. So which means it's a clear indicator. Rather than looking generic HR metrics, I would want to see something as simple as, okay, what's the budget versus actual for that store, right? Are there enough people on floor, okay, or are there too many new people? So every KPI that we see of a store, whether that's a UPT, ATV, right, everything that your same store growth, we have to correlate it and see, okay, if these KPIs are down, probably there are strong chances that the staff that I have on ground is not trained, right? Or probably it's trained but probably not cleared their OJTs. So we have to take out relevant metrics and measure that which is very, very relevant to our organization and our context, because in today's time, you just Google and you will get, 15, 20 fancy metrics that we can look at. But it's very overwhelming for the team because you need to collect data for it. So we need to keep it simple, look at business metrics, derive relevant HR metrics. Very recently, in one of our conversations, we realized some of our stores are degrowing. And suddenly there was a brainwave. CEO said, okay, let's look at leadership stability in those stores. So that's a metric we never tracked. And suddenly we saw, okay, yeah, these are the set of stores where there has been a lot of movement of the managers, which clearly indicates the store is not settled itself, and hence there is a degrowth. So I think we need to constantly look at some of these, beyond the obvious metrics to come at, make meaningful contribution to the business. That's my take.
Thank you, Yogesh. I think you made a very, very good point that when you search on Google, Google might throw up many matrices for you to measure, but which one is relevant to your business and how you go about doing that is extremely critical. Yeah, Shobha?
Thanks, and thanks to all the audience who's there today to hear us at the fag end of the day. So Ratnam, to me, I think metrics and data is all available. I mean, this is like now passé actually in today's world. The importance for us as HR professionals is how do we derive insights from these metrics and data? How do we try to build some sense in this data that we have? A lot of people, always tell me that HR is very emotional when they come up with solutions. They do not link it back to data. They don't support what they're trying to say. And I think data is very, very critical in the world today, especially so for HR. I think, like Yogesh said, I think some of the critical metrics that is there, it will differ about the organization, it will differ what is the stage of the organization, where is the organization in its journey. For me, if I fundamentally look at it, at least in the set of companies that I worked with, the brands that I kind of, were handling, I think for me, one of the fundamental metrics was about the employee engagement scores. How satisfied are your internal customers? Because if you get this metric right, if you kind of track this metric, a lot of other linked metrics, which is like, your attrition rate, like, how many people are, going, how are you being able to, your retention rate, all these metrics get sorted if you're able to take care of your employee satisfaction scores. Like we had just gone through an engagement survey last year, and we found a real correlation where we found that the highest attritions were in the teams where the managers had the lowest engagement scores, right? So these are some metrics. I think another important metric from an HR perspective, I would really say from business point of view, is actually the time to fill. How much of time are you taking to fill people in your retail stores? Because that's where 90% of your workforce is. And if you're going to mess that particular metric up, if you're not going to actually look into what is the stages of the hiring and where are you getting stuck, who are the people who are actually becoming the block in your hiring process, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to, fix the entire thing. A very important metric I've seen in my organizations, and especially because I handled brands which were going through the phase where they were mature brands, but of course struggling because the market's changed and the whole dynamics has changed, was productivity per person. We actually went a lot in Hamleys into productivity per person. We tried to identify which are the stores, how many people are there in those stores, what's the sale that is being generated, what's the sale per person. And we use these productivity metrics to actually take a target for ourselves and say that can we start with a pilot and say this X store could take a productivity metrics of 4 and how do we enable that store to reach that metric. So I think that's what I would like to say. For me, these three are fundamental and critical.
Fantastic. In fact, the point that Shobha made on HR productivity, is very, very important. She mentioned about time to hire, which is extremely important for a professional who is part of HR. Yeah, because?
So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me on as part of the panel here. So, Shobha has already pointed out and that there are many metrics that organization use, right? Say business-specific metrics to do with say sales per employee, profit per employee, and there are wide range of matrices that businesses use. Certain KPIs are industry agnostic. There are certain KPIs which are very specific to industries. So if I talk about business specific KPIs, like I said, there are many KPIs which is specific to industry for retail. But one KPI which I would like to point out and which is kind of very difficult to quantify is burnout. Now, why burnout? Because it's a silent killer of productivity, right? And so what we have done is we are trying to experiment a model which predicts burnout, right? And what it will do is it will focus on factors which actually lead to burnout of employees. See, these factors could be individual factors or organizational factors, say like overtime, work pressure, personal stress, and something to do with, say, disengagement on account of non-recognition, right? So if we consider these factors and what exactly we are trying to do is to develop an algorithm which will use these factors and create a model which will predict the burnout, right? In a way, what it will do is help us in identifying risk well in advance, and we can reach out to the employees who are actually, or we will reach out to the employees who are in the risk of burnout, help them, and in a way, the productivity will increase for people.
No, that's also a very important point. In fact, from my own organization, we figured out that there are mandatory health checkups that are provided to everybody, and above 40 you need to have a health checkup done every year, and we realized that only 20% of our people are doing that. And considering that post COVID there are many young people who are passing away and who are really ignorant about their health developments, it's very, very critical to look at that. And wellness as a metric is also an important element, which is coming into focus these days. Thank you for bringing that out. Yeah, Ravi.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me here in this panel. I know this is the toughest panel for us. This is the last panel of the day. So please bear us for another 29, 28 minutes. So I have a completely different perspective. When I say completely different perspective, I want to rephrase this. For me, nothing is an HR metrics. I don't think that HR metrics word exists for us. For me, it's all business metrics. So as an HR person, I am part of any employee's life cycle right from hire to retire. I am part of the business right, be it from, if I'm working for a startup or if I'm working for a matured organization, say 25-year, 30-year-old organization, like my friend Sabharatnam is working with a very, famous brand called Titan. So irrespective of which brand I am associated with, what kind of organization I am associated with, I am part of the journey right from day one. Until the time I work, I need to first A, understand the need of the business. B, I need to understand my people and what are their requirements. And when I have used this term hire to retire, which means that I need to understand what are some of the hiring challenges, what are some of the most recent hiring trends. We had been hearing since morning in different panels from some of our fellow colleagues about leveraging technology, leveraging AI. But as an HR person, when I recommend or when I start getting into some metrics reporting or when I kind of give a suggestion to my CEO, CFO, first I need to have a very, very strong rationale behind or before reaching to that conclusion. So every metrics, according to me, is important, be it your hiring trend, be it retaining your people. When you talk about retaining your people, how do you retain your people? And I'm just taking a clue from what Vikas has just spoken about. Wellness nowadays, especially post-COVID, had become talk of the town, had become most important subject in any organization. Be it a mature organization, be it a startup, there is a lot of debate which kind of keeps on happening here and there without taking name. Many senior leaders have spoken about 72 hours a week, 96 hours a week, so on and so forth. I don't want to get into that controversy, but having said that, wellness is something which is again one very, very important metric. Similarly, while we talk about wellness, we need to talk about productivity. We need to talk about profitability. That is another key metrics for me as an HR person. So as an HR person, how am I able to slice and dice the data? One is slicing and dicing the data, and then how do I present that? How do I make sure that I get the right outcome to become a progressive and productive and profitable organization? So that's how I look at overall metrics, not as an HR metrics, but as a business metrics.
Khushbu?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. See, I've been hearing my fellow colleagues talking about matrix, HR metrics, how do we look at data, do we look at. So for us, I mean, we are looking at very differently. For us, productivity, when we are trying to look at it, it is not something like how much sales we are able to generate per person, what is the contribution which is coming at the retail square feet per meter, how are we doing in terms of the retention part of it. So at an overall level, what we are trying to work around is how do we enhance our quality of manpower. So the comparison then comes around how is the retail space working in China, how is the retail space working in the other part of the world, where the productivity matrix vis-a-vis India is something like 10x. And so for one job, we have to hire 10 people. For them, that 10 people job is being done by one people. So it is more about how are we building efficiencies all across. So it can't be seen, the HR metric can't be seen in isolation. It has to be something where at a business level and at an organization level, how are we building the overall synergies is something what we are focusing on.
Yep, thank you. Anish?
Thank you, Mr. Ratnam. Can I call you Ratnam?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let me first introduce myself. I represent a company by the name Apollo Pharmacies Limited. We are the largest pharma retail chain in India. We have got 7,000 retail outlets. Why I gave this introduction is basically to give you the scale of the organizations. So primarily, as I said, the first challenge which comes to us is primarily with the introduction of 19 minutes delivery. The first priority which comes to HR is basically how do you fill the manpower, right, with attrition, and how do you retain them with the second metrics which we kind of look at. And the third is how do we, because we are in the industry, there is no chance for error, prescription error. You all know if a wrong medication is given to them, what is the kind of impact it can have. So how do you kind of ensure that with your training, how do you ensure there is no prescription errors which is coming to our stores? So, and how do you bring productivity at the store? So for that, we have introduced these 5 aspects of which is applicable to all the retail chains, which is basically what we call it as CHAMPS. C stands for the cleanness of the store, hospitality, accuracy, maintenance, product availability, and speed of services. We introduced this basically to bring productivity and ensure that it is used in all our incentive parameters and all. So these are the 3 basic parameters which we look at in terms of ensuring that HR is followed in the store. HR metrics are followed in the store. Thank you.
Basically, everything to do with business, assisting it and helping it to perform better, right? Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me on this panel. So I think my co-panelists have said it best already. Nothing in HR exists in isolation from business, right?
So
and I think-
Ashwin comes from Big Basket.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
So nothing in HR exists in isolation from the business, right? It's all about business at the end of the day. And therefore, I think what Ravi spoke about, the fact that is that end-to-end, look at hire to retire, is extremely critical. I think everybody's aware about the space in which we operate, the quick commerce space, and how it's really transformed in the last couple of years. So I think one of the key metrics for us is basically speed, right? How long does it take for our delivery fee to deliver? How long does it take for a picker in the dark store to pick a particular item? And therefore, how fast these actions can be made even more speedier. So I think that's one key element of the piece that comes to the picture for us. While it might look like a business metric, I think from an HR perspective, it's extremely important to figure out which stores are doing well, figure out why they're doing well, and therefore figure out what HR levers can be aligned to that. That's one key piece. The second element, of course, I think comes strongly from that is to track your high performers attrition specifically, because when you lose high performers, you see a magnified impact on productivity. So it's extremely critical that you look at that particular parameter. While of course overall attrition is good to have a look at, it's important that that particular parameter specifically is deep dived into. And lastly, something pretty basic, but I think extremely critical again in our context of things where speed and operational efficiency is extremely at the front and center, is something as basic as absenteeism. How do you track that, right? Because if you don't have people there, you can't deliver. If you don't have people, you can't pick, which means business directly gets impacted. I think these are few key metrics from an HR standpoint that we really look to kind of track, ensure that we align HR elements to this particular aspect of things, and ensure that ultimately the growth that we want to see gets delivered.
So Big Basket, quick commerce affecting them, so they want everything quick, right? And everything has to be double speed. Thank you for saying that. Yogesh, one question for you, which is related to, lot of data we have, and we are also collecting both qualitative information. GPTW awards just got over, and we also have quantitative data available with us. So how do you balance, the data and the insights that are drawn from that?
Sure. Thanks for asking that, Ratnam. So I think essentially both are, I would say, two sides of the same coin. Yeah, they complement each other really well. And if you really want to, you cannot conclude your journey from observation to insight if you are not looking at both, right? So people analytics, of course, is a very detailed, difficult. There is an angle of triangulation. There is statistics involved in it. Regression models and multiple things. But to keep it simple, I think even if we do these two things right, most of the time you will see the sum of the parts will be bigger than the whole, right? If you focus and balance both the things out. So we need to respect both kind of thesis, because your qualitative insights will validate what your numbers are telling you, and conversely your quantitative insights will kind of validate what your observations are. So both are important. To give a simple example, I'm sure a lot of us use different online tests as part of the hiring or as part of IGPs or assessment centers. I'm sure none of us make a call basis that, right? Because the test result is purely quantitative, right? But when you do interview, you are looking at the qualitative explanation of things. So we converge both and then we make a decision. Very similarly, it's appraisal season, right? And as HRs, I'm sure a lot of time we get to hear, after appraisal, this person is going to leave, this is going to happen, A lot of it is qualitative insight, okay? That it appears that, 50-60% of the organization is going to resign after appraisal. In this 25 years of my career, I have not seen quantitative data substantiated, right? There can be a point, some percentile spike, but it's not like. So I think it's very important we look at both the aspects. We need to ensure that the data is telling the story, and only then we kind of come out with a thing. And the best thing about if you use both it will breed innovation, right? If you look at simple things like automatic checkouts at Decathlon or automatic ordering at McDonald's, right? Or if you look at airports, we see nowadays self-check-in or self-backdrop. I'm sure these are proper convergence of qualitative insights converted with, then married correctly with quantitative insights, right? And only then these innovations were possible. So it's very simple to balance, but I think Jeff Bezos has a quote which says that, most of the time the anecdote is true than number. So I think, yes, it's important that we focus a lot on qualitative insight, but wherever possible, we kind of attach a number to it.
Yeah. No, it's a very valid comment that you're making, that while balancing the two, it's also important to see, how it's going to impact the organization and what immediate actions we need to draw out from that data, right? Hanish, one question, you have spent a lot of time and you have a very large workforce to manage. So you might have seen the evolution of these matrices, right, over time. So as the organization scales, from the beginning when it is a startup to growing to becoming a mature organization, what are the matrices that should change along with that?
See, I have the fortunate to work in a company where we are having both the systems. We have an offline format which has been running for almost 30 years, and we have recently started an online 24/7, which basically is a new startup. So we have two yardstick in terms of how do we manage both the businesses. When I go to offline format, which is my matured business, I basically look at sales per hour, labor cost, and all the stuff to see that labor cost is kept at a minimum, productivity is high. Whereas when I go to a startup stage, I'll rather not look at cost per hire, but I will rather look at scaling up business fast as possible and see that the things are moving faster. So here the agility is the key. Whereas in the matured business, probably we'll have to see that the cost is kept at all point wherever HR is getting into it. If that means hiring, in terms of retention, in terms of performance management. Whereas in a startup, probably these are all given a second guess. First is primarily to scale up the business. So that's the difference between both of it.
So what I heard in the beginning, which is, filling in time, also the cost of hire is very critical for a startup. But as the organizations mature, probably related to succession planning, leadership development, all of that becomes a priority, right? Yeah, thank you very much for that. I'll move on to Ashwin now. He's sitting up. Okay, Ashwin, measuring productivity without micromanagement or surveillance is also very critical. Please draw some insights on that for the audience.
Sure. Thanks, sir. So I think this is the key component, right? Productivity measurement is extremely important, but micromanagement is not beneficial in any way. A, it's a waste of the organization's resources. B, it does not foster transparency or trust in any fashion. So it's detrimental all way around. It's extremely important, therefore.
But I'll, just interrupt you for a while. I have seen folks inside the store, insisting that I micromanage because these guys don't know.
Right.
And especially for the kind of people that you manage, it is important to see whether they have understood what you are saying.
Right.
So
I think that's perfectly true.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think micromanagement is not about looking over their shoulder all the time, and specifically coming to the frontline staff of things. I think two pieces, right? The first is you train them well, give them the processes, make them understand. That's extremely key, and post that set them free. I think that's a very famous quote by the GRE Tata as well, right? You hire the best people, train them, and set them free. Basically, do not fetter them. I think that's really the essence, right? You don't just dump them in the swimming pool, but at the same time you handhold them and then see the magic that happens. So I think from our standpoint, 2 or 3 key things I think that come to the fore. One is, of course, how do you really sort of ensure that there are focus on outcomes, right? So you set out a very clear outcome saying, hey, this is our time to fill. this is our, time to deliver. You put out those boards out there, which everybody can see. You don't need to measure an individual person's performance. They're looking at the board, they know, okay, hey, our entire team today stands here. And therefore, it's important that I drive it individually so that together we get to that particular, outcome. So you put that outcome out there for them, what's expected. And I think the results will follow because people drive, they are them. I mean, that's an innate nature of every human being. How do I really push for that together as a cohort, right? So I think that's one key piece. How do you put that outcome out there and then let people go? The second piece really is about building a really strong culture, right? So that's pivotal. One of our key tenets at Big Basket is something we call as freedom with personal responsibility. So, every individual gets that freedom to kind of deliver in their role. But of course, we underline the importance of personal responsibility. I think the whole outcome-based thing I spoke about is stemming from that, right? You own the outcome. I have personal accountability for that outcome, but I give you the freedom. So, of course, I train you, I do all of that. So that's one key piece. I think the culture piece is an extremely important pivot. Without that, I think micromanagement will never go away. And the third key piece ideally is how do you really align certain, let's say, incentives, for lack of a better word, right? You align incentives to their desired outcomes, I'm sure you'll get there. We have our top 10% performers, our top 20% performers, right? And people who perform consistently, we have a flagship recognition program called the Rockstars. And that's where you invite them, you invite their families, there's this whole gala function, there's social recognition that happens, even when you go and give the invite to them, right? You go to their neighborhoods with this huge, band, etc. You create a ruckus around there, their neighbors know, their families know that they are, they've done something outstanding. I think recognition, pushing them for outcomes, providing the right culture enablers, and of course, building all of this on a very strong communication platform. Ensure that day in, day out, there's communication happening. Your daily huddles are happening, right? They're aware of what's happening. Why are we not doing well? What are we doing right? What do we need to do better? And I think all of this together brings in the synergy of really, getting to the productivity at the end of the day. And if you do all of this right, you don't need to really be looking over people's shoulders. So I think that's pretty much my take on it.
What a brilliant answer, right? And I was actually reflecting on the experience that I had with my Star Bazaar assessment. And I happened to see, when it comes to retail store staff, if your SOPs are very clearly defined, you don't really need to micromanage. And second bit is, relating that to what is in it for me, right? So the first point that he mentioned was, ensure that the goals are very clear so that they know what they are targeting and they will be able to manage and achieve that through reviews which are happening on a regular basis. Apart from that, you also need to marry that to the incentives. That is something that you said. And that's very critical because that matters to me. So if I perform well, I get more. And for this kind of people, it is extremely essential to bring that piece. And the third piece that you spoke about is culture, which again resonated very well with me because, organization culture defines whether people are going to stay with you or not. And we are also talking about ring fencing, which is a very, very critical challenge in today's retail industry. You just heard the GPTW fellows speak about 78% attrition, which was, not so good for the industry. And there are folks who don't see the desire of continuing for a long time because we are not engaging with them. We are not building the right culture. So that also resonates perfectly fine. You want to add something? Yeah.
So just one perspective to this, since we are talking about culture, I think four words which comes to top of my mind when we are talking about culture. Driving the culture or creating a culture which talks about I versus we, and then walking alone versus growing together. If we are able to inculcate these four things, if we are able to ensure that our people are able to differentiate these two words versus other two words, I think half of the work is done.
Thank you, Ravi, for bringing that point.
Just, I also want to add something. Adding to what my fellow panel members said, enabling, or rather, we need to create that kind of an environment at store where people feel empowered, right? But how do we enable that? That's the question that we should ask ourselves. to my mind, I feel there are certain we should enable them by using some data collaboration tools that should help employees to ask questions to their supervisors in terms of why there is a shortage of stock in the store, right? Why there is a shrinkage? Why there is or any other kind of challenges that they are facing day in day out, right? Instead of supervisors micromanaging and saying why have you haven't not done this job, right? So if we empower them with some certain kind of tools which will help them bring that kind of an autonomy of taking that responsibility, I think that will help really.
Yeah, that's again going back to culture and how do you build that culture where people can openly talk about what they want, right? So it's also about transparency and openness. Okay, coming to my sixth question. So Khushbu, this question is for you. There are, many HR techs which are, emerging HR trends that are redefining the workforce analytics. So can you throw some light on that?
So, so before going to future, let me tell you what is the past all about when it comes to retail. So, I think pre-COVID, if we see retail, it was largely about hiring, recruitment, and attrition. These were the two metrics we were trying to catch up. Also, the employee engagement, how people are people happy, are people not happy. Post-COVID, with the growth, with the kind of storm which retail has come into, we are moving from recruitment to in terms of quality recruitment. So now we are talking about skills. Are we having the right skill sets or not? Retention rather than attrition. Now we're talking about how do we retain the right talent, right? Engagements, when we are trying to say the survey, my survey is telling me this. However, is my survey vis-a-vis my productivity, my company performance, my attrition numbers are all syncing in the right space or not? Fourth, with the technology development in terms of how do I use AI, because my data set has increased from 1 data point to 15 data point. So earlier I only used to see, okay, these are my sources of recruitment and these are the number of people I'm getting from recruitment. Now how to manage my cost, where I have to reduce. Now today, if I have to identify in terms of the first thing what we want to say is which are my talent in the organization. Now today, if I have to identify talent in the organization, I can't see only source. I can't only see performance. I can't only see how the engagements is coming at a store level. There are many more metrics to it. Does the person has the potential to grow? Is he able to take more in his plate? How he's multitasking, how he's expanding in terms of meeting the future need of the organization, because we are growing 10x year on year. So if we are seeing in terms of growth, we are just doubling our numbers or tripling our numbers year on year. However, people are not growing in terms of the behavior, in terms of the mindset at the same time. So now looking at that, my data set has increased. So with my data set increase, I will have a tangible information, I will have something which is a non-tangible information. How do I integrate? How do I work it out? Is AI the platform what we have to use? Is chatbots or getting that very data, converting that data into some Excels or some models or in terms of some use cases, and then predicting what is right, what is wrong, or predicting that, okay, this is something which can work for us, these are some insights which are coming out, is the larger challenge what we are currently facing. So in terms of when I talk about Trent or Zudio, we have a lot of data in terms of, but all that data is in different, it must be in sometimes in the Excel sheet, sometimes it is there as a sales report which is available, sometimes it is there as a feedback mechanism in a different format. Now the thing is that how are we integrating that data? How are we running those right use cases for that very data? And how are we taking out the insight from that very data for us to work on that? So that's where we are on a journey.
Lovely. So she works for Trent, and we are talking about Zudio, which has grown multifold times. And the challenge with the organization is that they are sitting on a diamond now, and they have launched their lab-grown diamond, which is POM, and that has huge potential. So how do you look at what trend we have and how do we scale up, right?
Yeah, so again, while we are launching new product, we are exploring new markets. So POM is one, beauty, Zudio Beauty is something what we have launched. So we are expanding in multiple categories. We want our internal people to grow around that. How do we do that capability matrix? How do we do that? Is the person ready, not ready? All these are trends for us. So for HR, for me to capture, it's all behavior trends, which I have to capture. And that is not a tangible information. So I have to create my models right for me to reach to that very decision making.
So quick 30 seconds to Shobha. What is your advice for organizations, starting with HR analytics?
Thanks, Ratnam. And I just have 30 seconds, so I'll just summarize this very quickly. I think for any organization that is stepping into HR analytics and wanting to invest in that, I think the first important thing is get a sponsor for yourself. And I have really seen this, that if you have at least one person at the top who is convinced about what HR analytics can bring to the table, your work is going to be a lot more easier. Second quick thing I would want to tell all of you guys is that when you look at HR analytics, I think look at a business problem to solve. It's not HR versus business. HR is serving business, so it has to be a business problem. Is it attrition? Is it productivity? What is the real issue that is there? And I think third thing, which is very critical and somewhere we forget it, is, HR folks themselves need to be convinced about this. A lot of times I think the struggle is because HR themselves do not see too much of value in getting into data, understanding that, trying to derive insights. So I think that's very important. And the last and the foremost point is, don't look at all metrics that you can think of. When you start with HR analytics, when you're trying to get into a formal way and show business that, look, we also can give you data-backed scientific, results, then start with small metrics. Maybe start with only retention. Maybe start only with annualized attritions. Start with some metric that will kind of actually make a big impact to your business. And once you show that impact, I'm sure that they'll be convinced.
Like to
30
add.
seconds.
Yeah, it was a little more than that, but it's okay.
Quick response and reaction. So what worked well for us in our organization, and I was part of the entire journey of setting up this HR analytics at Reliance Retail. One mantra worked for us, which was crawl, walk, and run. Okay. So crawl means we start with basic dashboards like ELCM dashboards, hiring dashboards, and like that, and then gradually progress and evolve to get into the predictive part of it, right? So we have reached a stage where we are into now predictive analytics, where we have done attrition prediction models, burnout models that we are experimenting now, and then integrate with prescriptive analytics. So the mantra here is crawl, walk, run.
Thank you, Vikas. Vikas actually manages analytics, so in case you want to catch up, you can do that offline. Now I'll open up, for some questions if you may have.
I think everyone is like just kind of absorbing what has been told and they're going to sink into that and maybe they'll have questions later.
So, yeah, I can see a hand raised there.
Someone can give her the mic.
The ethical decision making when looking at data analytics, and for example, you spoke about we are looking at retention and we know the person may be a high risk, but also your top talent. Do you take a choice that now I have this information, do I further invest or let the person go, right? Because all of these questions will come up with so much data coming in. There is always that gray line on how much do you know about a person's decisions and what do you take, right? And do you use those models then to take a biased judgment or an unbiased judgment basis that? So have you all built policies or thought about that while building, HR analytics at a larger scale and using it for decision making?
Whom are you asking this question to?
Anyone in the panel?
Okay.
Maybe who's already at an advanced stage.
Okay, so maybe I'll give it a try. So one word answer is unbiased judgment. We will go with the data, irrespective if the person is a super duper performer for me. That's one word answer. If I'm an HR person, obviously, forget if I'm an HR person or not, if I'm a business leader, whatever is my role. As an organization, ethics has to be into the core of the DNA. So we should not and we will not compromise on the ethics part of it. So irrespective who the person is, we'll go by the data, we'll have an unbiased decision and we'll take action.
So I'll just answer that, and if I understood your question, you basically are saying that if I come to know that, from my retention model, I know that someone is at a high risk and maybe looking out for a job, am I going to really, as an organization, start using that data against the person? The answer is no. Most organizations are ethical when it comes to basics, and we do not flout that because we, at the end of it, are all resources ourselves. And we respect that, right? Now, what do we do when we come to know that there is a person, there is a high performer, but that performer is looking out in the market? I get this data maybe on a monthly basis. But what do? I try to see what could be the reasons that this person is disengaged. Why is this person really looking out for a job somewhere? Can I do something to bring that intervention to the table, right? So I think that's how Reliance as an organization is looking at that data when you look at analytics. And we are absolutely respecting the privacy and the ethical part of it. I hope this answers.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hi,
please
everyone.
tell your name and where are you from.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. My name is Saurit, and I lead the Pan-India retail strategy in the capacity of HR. I'm representing from Adidas. Okay, so my question is, Shobha, to you. Now, as Adidas, when it comes to own retail, we have scaled up, is what we think. Now it's the time where we think of productivity, especially manpower productivity in our store. So according to you, what are top two metrics that we should look at?
So if your business is in that stage where it's actually scaling, and you are really growing large, and you need to look at productivity. So I think you need to go back a little to the drawing board. You need to understand that basically if you have a store, what's the kind of, maybe the turnover that the store needs to create, right? What's the kind of square feet area that is there? What's the kind of customer experience that you would like to give? Maybe what's the kind of products that you're getting in, right? And when you look at all these factors, you then go back to saying that, am I actually getting the right kind of people into that store? Because my productivity is going to be linked to the quality of the hire that I'm going to get on board. Second, once you've done that, you also try to see that if I have 5 people who are there in the store and I get 2 people right in, but what about the 5 who are there in the store? What is the kind of skill sets that's needed? Maybe because the scenario is changing, your market is changing. So how can I kind of upskill them? So I think these are the 2-3 things that you should look at when you're looking at productivity.
Can I just add to it? So adding to what Shobha said, there's no one-to-all fitting approach here, right? Because if you see, it all depends on the maturity level of the business that you are currently at, right? The focus and the priorities varies, right? And again, within format, say within a particular business, which is at whatever level of the maturity, again, within that format also, for different kinds of stores, the interventions and the focus area will change, right? So there is no one standard approach that you can apply to all these set of stores that you have. Say it will even vary for geographies, right? So again, adding to what she said, there is no one approach applicable.
Cool. Thanks so much. Thank you.
So thank you, folks. I think we are well beyond time and we would like to wind up. Thank you, panelists. It was wonderful talking to each and every one of you. Really engaged well, and probably there were good insights for me as well. And I'll touch base with all of you separately on that. Thank you once again.
Thanks to all of you for being an engaging audience and to carry on, right? It's almost about 5:30, I think.